proceed.
Do you recall, now I want to talk about any other litigation that you recall. Now, this may be a long list, but, and maybe the best way to do this would be to start at the earliest in time and then go forward. So was that the first lawsuit that you've been involved in that had Cindy Wilson as a partner?
No.
Okay, tell me the first one you recall.
Personally or for the county?
Either one, whether you were, you know.
Let's see. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The county attorney filed in his lawsuit, so I'm going to say 9 with Cindy Wilson.
Approximately, maybe, and I'll give you some leeway there, but
With
maybe
9 as it relates to the Beaver Dam Creek Sewer Project.
Okay, was that before Ms. Wilson became a council member?
She was an activist before, but it was after she became a councilor.
Okay. And let me see if I can just make this, maybe I can make this a little simpler, maybe I can. Sounds like there were some lawsuits involved in the Beaver Dam Sewer Project.
Lots of lawsuits.
Okay, and how many of those lawsuits also involve Cindy Wilson? 9
of them.
Okay, I got you. So that's what you were telling me.
Yes.
There were 9 lawsuits, all sort of blocked, that all related to Beaver Dam Sewer Project. And Cindy Wilson was involved in all of that, all 9. And those are that's the first experience you had with litigation with Ms. Wilson.
I believe there may have been another one. I'm thinking the number's 10, but I can't recall what the 10th one would have been for.
And that's just to try to shorten it a little bit. The Beaver Dam Sewer Project involved Ms. Wilson, at least in part because some portion of a sewer pipeline ran through her property. Is that fair?
Ran through her mother's property.
Okay. And was that the reason?
And her several other family members.
And generally speaking, how did those lawsuits resolve? Was it the case? I mean,
County prevailed.
yeah, so essentially there was litigation that tried to prevent the installation of the sewer line through those properties that involved Ms. Wilson's family. Is that fair?
Prevent and stall permits.
And in the end, the sewer line was installed as it had been planned. Is that fair?
We lost several industries in a large housing project.
What else? What other litigation that you've been involved in that also involved Ms. Wilson? The Beaver Dam sewer lawsuit you've got, this defamation case. What else do you remember? If we're coming forward in time.
Ms. Wilson sued me.
And that's fine too. I'll count those.
Yeah, she sued me, and since she sued the county, and I can't recall how she did that, but as a city council member, she did.
Do you remember what that was about, generally?
She claimed that I didn't provide her with information that she had requested, I believe, the foundation and basis of it.
You know how it resolved?
Prevailed.
You prevailed?
The county and myself, yeah.
Was that a lawsuit in which you had the county's backing?
I think it ended up being just a county because she sued me in my official capacity, I believe.
What other litigation do you recall that involved Ms. Wilson?
I asked the court to intervene with her and Bob Walter. I think it was in 08.
Okay. And you had the county's blessing for that lawsuit? Do you recall?
I did.
And what happened as a result of that?
The judge issued a restraining order.
Against both Ms. Wilson and Mr. Walker?
That's right.
And that involved their dealing with county employees directly? Is that generally, is that a general good way to describe it?
Harassment of employees. And dealing directly with it.
Okay. And now let me take you back to 2008 with the sitting county council. This is the county council that's not yet changed over on January 1, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Do you contend in this lawsuit, or do you contend, let me ask it this way, do you contend that the existing 2008 Anderson County Council ever breached your employment agreement?
2008.
Right.
This is, I can't give you a legal, but
right.
I think it's possible.
That the existing county council actually
I
breached it?
don't know.
Let me ask this.
Mm-hmm.
Was there ever a time in 2008 that you didn't get your paycheck?
No.
Was there ever a time in 2008 that you, before November 18th, 2008, let's say, any time before November 18th, 2008 that you quit your job as the county administrator for Anderson County? If there was any breach of your contract with Anderson County in 2008, prior to November 18th, 2008, what is your belief as to what that breach would have been?
Well, you asked me to quote me, I don't know.
So you can't articulate, would you agree you can't articulate any breach of your contract by the Anderson County Council in 2008 prior to November 18th?
At that time.
Right. Have you been able
I know that they were, Walter and Wilson were running around interfering with my ability to be able to do my job.
Okay.
That happened often, and that was the basis for that one incident, which other incidents were discussed, where we asked the judge to intervene. I can think of other situations too where Walter and Wilson would deal directly with vendors and go beyond around what county council voted on.
Were there any county council members that you were concerned about interfering with your ability to do your job in 2008 other than Bob Waldrop or Cindy Wilson?
No.
Now, you've mentioned it, and I'm going to take this a little bit out of order, but I think this is the right time to ask you about this. I'm going to show you what's been marked as plaintiff exhibit number 1. Ask if you recognize it.
Yes, sir.
What is it?
It's a letter I wrote to county council members concerning the incident that occurred in the finance office.
The incident that occurred in the finance office, would you agree with me that that's an incident that occurred in December 2007?
December, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Of 2007, right?
Yes.
And that was Mr. Waldrop and Ms. Wilson that were involved as county council members?
Yes.
And did that involve the TV camera crew?
Mm-hmm.
Or a video crew, I guess, of some kind? I don't know if it was a TV camera crew, but.
I believe it did.
And this memo was written August 11, 2008, is that right?
Yes.
And you signed it?
Yes.
That's your signature on the first page?
Yes.
And would it be fair for me to characterize this as your request of county council for approval for you to file a declaratory judgment complaint against Mr. Waldrop and Ms. Wilson?
I told the county council members what I had intended to do.
And did you seek their approval for it?
I talked with them individually.
Okay. And in the end, do you feel like you got the approval of county council to file a DJ action, a declaratory judgment
I
action?
didn't feel like I had to ask or to have approval in order to do that because I'm responsible. I'm responsible for day-to-day activities of the county.
Again, I'm not concerned with whether you felt like you had to or didn't have to. I'm asking, did you feel like you actually had
I
their
did.
approval, whether you thought you needed to or not?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you had the support, fair enough to say you had the support of county council as a whole
Yes.
to file a declaratory judgment action that is attached to exhibit number 1.
Yes, and this was discussed too in council meetings, I believe.
Okay. And in that draft declaratory judgment action on page 3, you reference the December 12, 2007 incident at the finance office, correct?
Pages on
I'm sorry, page 3 and it's paragraph 16.
Yes.
Would you agree that you also list other complaints that you had about how Mr. Waldrop and Ms. Wilson were interfering with your ability to do your job in this declaratory judgment action?
Yes.
It wasn't just the December 2007 incident, correct?
That's right.
And ultimately, would you agree that a declaratory judgment action pretty similar to this one, if not identical to this draft, was actually filed against Mr. Waldrop and Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
In that lawsuit, You provided an affidavit at one point, correct?
I believe I did.
Just hold on a second. Let me show you now what's marked as exhibit number 2. You recognize exhibit number 2 as an affidavit signed by you and dated October 16, 2008.
Yes.
And were the statements you made in this affidavit true at the time you made them?
I have time to read it.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And this is a document you prepared in support of the declaratory judgment action that had been filed against Mr. Walter and Ms. Wilson, correct?
It's a document that the county, the attorney prepared and signed.
What were you trying to relay to the court by signing this affidavit and presenting information that you presented in it?
I guess the obstructional behavior that the Waldrop and Wilson were demonstrating prohibiting me along with my staff from doing their jobs, interfering with them, not daily but often.
Would it be fair to say you were trying to demonstrate to the court the ways in which you were aware of that Mr. Waldrop and Ms. Wilson were interfering with your ability to do your job on a day-to-day basis?
And these are all incidents that have occurred either in council meetings or what they had just done on their own.
And let me ask my question again. Would it be fair to say that you were presenting information to the court about incidents that you were aware of that you felt like were demonstrative of Mr. Waldrop and Ms. Wilson trying to interfere with your job on a day-to-day basis?
Yes.
And this affidavit provided in support of an attempt to get an injunction against Mr. Waldrop and Ms. Wilson to stop them from doing the types of things you were saying were interfering with your job, right?
Not just me, but interfering in county business. And quite possibly violation of home rule.
And again, I appreciate you want to answer, expanding the answer, that's fine, but I have to ask questions to get an answer to my question.
Mm-hmm.
You were the plaintiff in the case, correct?
Yeah.
And so what you were trying to do with this lawsuit was get an injunction to stop Mr. Waldrop and Ms. Wilson from interfering with your ability to do your job, among other things.
Yeah.
If you were aware back in October 2008 of serious incidents of interference with your job by Mr. Waldrop and Ms. Wilson, would you have tried to include them in your affidavit?
In October?
Yes. At the time you wrote the affidavit, or at least signed.
would have included what I was aware of.
You would have tried to include everything you were aware of, right?
I believe, and what any other employee would have suggested also.
And these incidents that you identified, if you look at page, I think it starts on page 3, there's a list that's alphabetized, you see that? Starts with letter A. A list of specific incidents.
Yes.
Goes from A through Y. Would you agree?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that all of the incidents that are listed happened prior to September 25th, 2008?
Yes.
And in fact, there's one other incident that you mentioned in paragraph 3 of the affidavit, which is I believe this is the reference you made earlier in your testimony about the August 5th, 2008 meeting with Mr. Waldrop. You make mention of that same meeting in paragraph 3 of the affidavit. Would you agree?
You're talking about this paragraph on page 2?
Yeah, I think so. You see that, paragraph 3? There's a reference to August 5th, 2008 is what I'm pointing out.
No, that didn't happen at that meeting.
Okay, what is that August 5th, 2008?
I don't know. That's not what happened at the meeting. I'm not sure. Let me think here. Yes, it did. Sorry.
Okay, so the August 5th, 2008 reference in paragraph 3 of the affidavit, which is exhibit number 2, that's a reference to Mr. Waldrop making certain comments at an August 5th, 2008 council meeting.
These are some of his comments, but it's not complete.
But that was one of the things you were complaining about as part of the case in which you sought an injunction against Mr. Waldrop.
Right.
And as a result of the lawsuit seeking injunctive relief, would you agree with me that the court did issue a grant a temporary injunction against Mr. Waldrop and Ms. Wilson?
Yes. Yes, sir. Sorry.
And the county council that was in place in 2008, prior to November 2000, I'm sorry, would you agree with me that the county council that was in place in Anderson County in 2008 took no steps to terminate you prior to November 18, 2008?
As a majority board, no. As a minority, we attempted to through special call meeting, yes.
And that was not by the existing council as a body. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it failed. The body didn't vote for it, but the attempt within the body was made.
Like a motion or something was made at some point, and it failed.
Yes.
Would you agree with me that the majority of the county council in place in 2008 never voted to terminate you prior to November 18, 2008? Would you agree with that?
Yes.
I'm going to show you now Smart Exhibit 3. I'm going to ask you first if you recognize what it is.
Yes.
What is that document, exhibit number 3?
It's a letter that my attorney, Hoskins, wrote to the county council member September 25th.
Would you agree that Mr. Hoskins was authorized to write this letter on your behalf?
Yes.
And it's dated September 25th, 2008, correct?
Yes.
And in the second sentence of the document indicates that, among other things, it has come to your attention, Mr. Preston, that certain existing council members have made statements that they and certain newly elected council members intend, after January 2009, to prevent you, Mr. Preston, from carrying out your duties as county administrator. It includes that, a sentence to that effect, correct?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that that was the fundamental complaint that you had with respect to you were concerned about your job back in September 2008?
Yes. Okay.
Anything about that language that makes you think county council cannot terminate you at any time, subject only to the provisions of section 3, which talked about severance pay?
Repeat your question.
You have a question here?
I think there are others, the contract, in addition to this contract.
And I'm just talking about the contract.
Oh, okay. Your question?
Based on what you had heard from Mr. Waldrop and Ms. Wilson, and what you had heard about what the newly elected council members plan to do, your concern was that you would either be suspended or terminated by the newly elected county council once they took office on or after January 1st, 2009, is that correct?
Not just what I heard, but what I actually read later on and had heard the day of the meeting, the August 5th meeting.
In other
Special
words,
call meeting.
what I'm getting at is, you believed on September 25th, 2008, when your lawyer wrote this letter on your behalf, you believed that the concern was real, but that it was a concern that you would be either suspended or terminated by the newly elected county council once it took power in January 2009, correct?
Yes.
In this letter, September 25th, 2008, if you look down about, I mean, it's come up to you, halfway through the first paragraph, there's a sentence that starts with, well, it starts